Thunder crashed through the mountains as Jack Steele, leather-clad and battle-scarred, pushed his Harley through sheets of rain that turned the winding road into a death trap. 20 years with the Hells Angels had taught him to handle dangerous situations. But nothing had prepared him for getting lost in these remote Montana peaks during the worst storm in decades. When his bike finally gave out, Jack spotted a dark cabin hidden among towering pines. He kicked in the door seeking shelter, but froze when he saw her. Sarah Collins crouched in the corner, blood seeping through her torn shirt, eyes wide with terror. She wasn't afraid of the storm outside. She was afraid of whoever had hurt her. Jack faced a choice that would change everything. Walk away and stay safe, or protect a stranger and risk his life. But what deadly secret was Sarah hiding that made someone want her dead? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Jack stepped carefully into the cabin, his boots crunching on broken glass scattered across the wooden floor. The woman pressed herself deeper into the corner, clutching something silver against her chest. Her blonde hair was matted with blood, and a deep gash ran along her left temple. "Easy there," Jack said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you." Sarah's eyes darted to the Hells Angels patches on his leather vest, and her breathing quickened. "Stay back." "I know what you people do." Jack slowly removed his vest, revealing the faded green Army Ranger tattoo on his forearm. "Look, I'm not what you think. Let me help you with that wound." He moved to the cabin's small kitchen area, finding a clean dish towel and a bottle of water. Years of combat medicine training kicked in as he assessed her injuries from a distance. The head wound was bleeding but not life-threatening. More concerning were the defensive marks on her arms and the way she favored her left side. "You're hurt worse than just that cut," Jack observed. "Ribs?" Sarah nodded reluctantly. "2, maybe 3 broken. I need to look at them." "That vest has to come off." "No." Her voice was firm despite the pain. Jack sat down across the room, giving her space. "I was Army Rangers before the club. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan. Saw plenty of field medicine. Those ribs could puncture a lung if they're not set right." Thunder shook the cabin walls, and both of them glanced toward the boarded windows. The storm showed no signs of letting up. "What's your name?" Jack asked. "Sarah." She hesitated. "Sarah Collins. I'm Jack Steele. Been riding these mountains for 15 years, never seen a storm like this. We're stuck here until it passes." Sarah's grip tightened on the silver object in her hand. Jack caught a glimpse of a heart-shaped locket, its surface stained with blood. "Someone did this to you," he said. It wasn't a question. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She refused to let fall. "They want me dead." "They want what I have." "Who's they?" "Vincent Carrera. He runs things in Seattle. Gambling, drugs, worse things." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I used to work for him. Keep his books." "I thought it was legitimate business." Jack leaned forward. "What changed?" "I found out what the numbers really meant. Not just money laundering, human trafficking. Kids, Jack, little kids." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jack's hands clenched into fists, old rage stirring in his chest. He'd seen what monsters could do to innocents overseas. The thought of it happening here, in his own country, made his blood boil. "You have evidence?" Sarah nodded, touching the locket. "Everything. Bank records, shipping manifests, names of politicians on his payroll. Vincent found out I copied the files. His men came to my apartment last night." Jack stood and checked the cabin's door, testing the makeshift barricade he'd kicked through. The wood was solid, but the lock was broken. He grabbed a heavy chair and wedged it under the door handle. "How'd you get away?" "Fire escape. Grabbed what I could and ran. My car broke down about 5 miles from here. I've been walking through the woods all day. Vincent's men know you're out here." "They know I didn't get far. My car's probably already found." Sarah winced as she shifted position. "They'll search every cabin, every cave, every tree if they have to." Jack moved to the window and peered through a gap in the boards. The rain was coming down in torrents, turning the dirt road into a river of mud. Even with 4-wheel drive, Vincent's men would have trouble reaching this place tonight. "We've got maybe 12 hours before they can get up here," he said. "Let me look at those ribs." Sarah studied his face for a long moment, then slowly nodded. As Jack approached with the medical supplies, she whispered, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Jack's fingers found the dog tags hidden beneath his shirt, metal worn smooth by years of wear. They belonged to a different man, a soldier who'd believed in protecting the innocent. That man had died in a desert far from home, but maybe some part of him still lived. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because some fights are worth having." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, two strangers began the delicate process of learning to trust each other. Neither of them knew that this moment would change everything, that the choice to help would set in motion events that would test every belief they held about justice, loyalty, and love. Jack carefully wrapped Sarah's ribs with strips torn from a clean bedsheet, his touch professional but gentle. She'd allowed him to examine her injuries, revealing the full extent of the damage Vincent's men had inflicted. 3 cracked ribs, multiple bruises, and that head wound that needed stitches he couldn't provide. "Your phone," Jack said, noticing the cracked smartphone on the floor nearby. "Is it still working?" Sarah reached for it with trembling fingers. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, but when she pressed the power button, it flickered to life. "Barely! The battery's almost dead." Jack took the device and scrolled through the recent messages. What he saw made his jaw tighten. Encrypted text conversations, coded language that spoke of shipments and payments. But one thread was in plain English, and it chilled him to the bone. "These messages," he said slowly. "Vincent knows you have the files. He's been texting me all day. Threats, promises, lies about letting me live if I return what I took." Sarah's voice was hollow. "He knows I won't trust him." Jack read aloud from the most recent message. "Sarah, my dear, you have something that belongs to me. Return it, and perhaps your daughter will see her next birthday." The color drained from Sarah's face. "Emma, oh God, Emma, you have a daughter." 8 years old. "She's with my sister in Portland. Vincent doesn't know where." Sarah's hands shook as she reached for the phone. "At least I thought he didn't." Jack's mind shifted into tactical mode, the same calculating mindset that had kept him alive through 3 combat deployments. "What exactly did you take from Vincent?" Sarah opened the blood-stained locket and carefully removed a micro SD card, no bigger than a fingernail. "Bank records going back 5 years. Wire transfers to offshore accounts. Shipping manifests for containers that officially don't exist. Names of judges, senators, police chiefs on his payroll. Jesus Christ, the human trafficking operation spans 12 states. Kids as young as 6 being moved through a network of safe houses, shell companies, and corrupt officials." Sarah's voice cracked. "I helped him launder the money, Jack. I didn't know what it was for, but I helped him." Jack studied the tiny memory card. Such a small thing to contain so much evil. This could bring down his entire operation and get everyone who's seen it killed, including Emma now. Thunder crashed overhead, but Jack barely noticed. His fingers found his phone, checking for signal. 2 bars, enough to make a call if needed. But who could he trust with information this dangerous? "Vincent has people everywhere," Sarah continued. "Police, FBI, judges. That's how he's operated for 20 years without being touched." Jack stood and paced to the window. Through the rain, he thought he saw lights moving in the distance. Too far away to be sure, but his instincts were screaming danger. How many men does he usually travel with? For something like this? At least a dozen. All ex-military, well-armed, completely loyal. Sarah struggled to sit up straighter. "Jack, you need to leave. Take my car keys and go. Don't let him find you here with me. Your car's broken down, remember? Then take my bike. It's hidden in the woods about half a mile east. Vincent's men won't think to look for a motorcycle." Jack turned from the window. "I'm not leaving you. You don't understand. Vincent doesn't just kill people. He makes examples of them. What he did to the last person who crossed him." Sarah shuddered. "Please, Jack, I won't have your death on my conscience too." "What makes you think I can't handle Vincent's men?" "Because there are too many of them, and they have military training just like you." Jack smiled grimly. "Lady, you don't know what kind of training I have. Before Sarah could respond, Jack's phone buzzed with an incoming text. Unknown number. His blood ran cold as he read the message. Mr. Steele, we know you're with our property. Bring her out and you live. Resist and join her in hell. Sarah saw his expression change. They found us. Jack moved quickly to his motorcycle gear, pulling out items Sarah hadn't noticed before. A tactical knife, emergency flares, and something that looked like a small radio transmitter. How long have they been watching? Long enough to know my name. Jack activated the transmitter and spoke quietly into it. Ghost Leader, this is Phantom. I need immediate backup at coordinates I'm sending now. High-value target in protective custody. Multiple hostiles inbound. Sarah stared at him. Who are you calling? Insurance, Jack said, then keyed the radio again. Also request immediate protection detail for Emma Collins, age 8, currently in Portland, with guardian Lisa Collins. Treat as priority 1 extraction. The radio crackled with a response. Copy, Phantom. Assets moving to both locations. ETA to your position 90 minutes. Jack looked at Sarah with new intensity. We just need to stay alive for 90 minutes. Sarah stared at Jack as he methodically checked weapons she hadn't known he was carrying. Who did you just call? What kind of backup? Jack pulled his Hell's Angels vest back on, the leather worn smooth from years of wear. Each patch told a story of brotherhood, loyalty, and a code that ran deeper than law. People who owe me favors. People who understand that some fights matter more than politics. You're not just some biker, are you? I'm exactly what I appear to be. A man who made choices. Jack's fingers traced the club's colors on his vest. But before I was Hell's Angels, I was other things. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. Tank here. It's Jack. I need the club. A long pause. What kind of trouble you in, brother? The kind that matters. Woman and child being hunted by traffickers. High-level corruption involved. Jack, you know the rules. Club business stays club business. Civilian problems stay civilian. Jack looked at Sarah, seeing the fear in her eyes as she listened to his side of the conversation. This isn't civilian problems, Tank. This is about protecting innocence. About doing what's right. Right according to who? The law? We don't exactly have a great relationship with the law, if you recall. Right according to the code our fathers taught us. The code that says you protect those who can't protect themselves. Another pause, longer this time. Jack could almost hear Tank weighing loyalty to the club against the morality that still lived somewhere in his weathered heart. How many you facing? Vincent Carrera's crew. Dozen men, maybe more. Ex-military, well-armed. Jesus, Jack, Carrera. That psychopath has half the West Coast in his pocket, which is why someone needs to stop him, and that someone has to be you. Jack closed his eyes, remembering another conversation from 15 years ago. A different phone call, a different crisis, but the same fundamental question. When do you stand up and fight? Tank, I ever tell you why I left the army? Said you got tired of taking orders. That's not the whole truth. Jack's voice grew quiet. Last mission in Afghanistan. My unit was tasked with protecting a village from Taliban insurgents. Command ordered us to pull out when the political situation changed. Abandon the villagers who'd helped us. Sarah watched Jack's face as he spoke, seeing pain she hadn't noticed before. I followed orders, Jack continued. Left those families to die because it was easier than making waves. Came home to find out the Taliban slaughtered everyone in that village 2 days later. Men, women, children, all because I chose following orders over doing what was right. Jack, I joined the club because I thought brotherhood meant something. That standing together meant standing for something. Jack's grip tightened on the phone. If we can't protect a woman and child from monsters, what the hell are we good for? Tank's voice was softer when he spoke again. You know what you're asking. Club votes to help you? We're at war with one of the most powerful crime organizations on the West Coast. I'm asking you to remember why we wear these colors in the first place. Through the phone, Jack could hear Tank talking to other members in the background. Heated voices, arguments about exposure and risk. The club had its own code of survival, and helping civilians against organized crime violated that code in fundamental ways. Half the guys think you've lost your mind, Tank said finally. The other half think you're the only one of us still has a soul. What do you think? I think Maria wouldn't have wanted you to die for strangers. The mention of Jack's late wife hit like a physical blow. Maria had died in a car accident 3 years ago, killed by a drunk driver who got off with community service because his father was a judge. Jack had almost burned down the courthouse that day. Maria would have wanted me to save that little girl, Jack said quietly. You know she would. A long silence stretched between them. Outside the cabin, Jack could hear engines in the distance, growing closer. Club votes in 10 minutes, Tank said. But Jack? Some of the boys are already riding your way. Guess they figure family means something after all. How many? 6 confirmed. Maybe more by the time we get there. Jack smiled for the first time since finding Sarah. Thanks, brother. Don't thank me yet. Guerrera's got resources we don't. This could be a suicide run. Wouldn't be the first time. Tank's laugh was grim. See you in hell, Jack. The line went dead. Jack turned to find Sarah watching him with something approaching awe. Your club is coming to help? Some of them. Maybe all of them. Jack checked his weapons one more time. Depends on whether they remember what brotherhood really means. Jack moved through the cabin with the efficiency of a predator preparing for war. From his motorcycle saddlebags, he retrieved items that transformed him from biker to soldier, night vision scope, tactical knife, and a vintage Colt 45 that had belonged to his grandfather. This was carried at Normandy, he said, checking the weapons action. Granddad always said it never failed him when things got bad. Sarah watched him work, fascinated and terrified by the transformation. How many men have you killed, Jack? He paused in his preparations. In the army. Or since? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Killing enemy combatants in war is one thing. Killing criminals who threaten innocence is another. Both change you, but differently. Jack moved to the windows, using his knife to create small observation ports between the boards. First rule of defensive warfare: know your enemy's position before they know yours. Outside, the storm was beginning to weaken, but darkness had fallen completely. Jack attached his night vision scope to the rifle he'd assembled from components hidden throughout his gear. Vincent's men will approach from the road first, he explained, settling into position by the main window. They'll expect us to run, not fight. That gives us maybe one advantage. What if your club doesn't come? Jack's jaw tightened. Then we hold them off as long as we can, and hope my other backup arrives first. Through the scope, Jack spotted movement at the tree line. 2 figures in tactical gear, moving with military precision toward the cabin. They carried assault rifles and wore body armor, but they were approaching carelessly, confident in their superiority. 2 scouts, coming from the northeast. Jack whispered. They think they're hunting a scared accountant and a washed-up biker. He watched the men advance, timing their movement patterns, calculating angles of fire. These weren't street thugs or common criminals. Their formation and equipment suggested serious military training. Sarah, get down behind the kitchen counter. Stay low no matter what happens. Jack waited until the first scout was within 50 yards before making his move. He slipped out the cabin's back door, using the storm's remaining noise to mask his approach. Years of Special Forces training kicked in as he became a ghost in the darkness. The first man never saw him coming. Jack struck from behind, the tactical knife finding the gap between helmet and body armor. The scout dropped silently, his radio falling into the mud. The second scout realized something was wrong when his partner failed to check in. Jack watched through his scope as the man activated a flashlight, searching for his missing teammate. Baker, where are you? Baker, respond. Jack had positioned himself behind a fallen log, the second scout now between him and the cabin. When the man turned toward Jack's position, searchlight sweeping the darkness, Jack put a single round through his center mass. The Colt's report echoed through the forest like thunder. Moving quickly, Jack searched both bodies. Military-grade equipment, encrypted radios and ammunition that confirmed his worst fears. Vincent wasn't taking chances with local muscle. He'd brought professional killers. Jack keyed one of the captured radios, listening to the chatter from Vincent's main force. Alpha Team, report status. Baker and Charlie are down. Repeat, Baker and Charlie are down. A different voice, older and carrying authority. This is Vincent. Who am I speaking to? Jack smiled grimly and responded, Vincent, this is the man who's going to kill you if you don't walk away right now. Ah, Mr. Steele, the famous Hell's Angel. I've heard stories about you. Then you know what happened to the last people who threatened innocents around me. Vincent's laugh was cold. I know you're outnumbered 12-1. I know your precious club brothers are still 40 minutes away. And I know that the woman you're protecting killed 3 of my best men when she escaped Seattle. Jack looked back toward the cabin, seeing Sarah's face in the window. She'd killed 3 men. The scared accountant was tougher than she'd let on. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent continued. You're going to send Sarah out with my property. In exchange, I'll kill you quickly instead of letting my boys have fun with you first. Counteroffer, Jack replied. You leave now, and I let you live long enough to see prison. You're protecting a murderer. Mr. Steele, Sarah Collins isn't the innocent victim she's pretending to be. Jack's blood ran cold as Vincent's words sank in. He looked toward the cabin again, wondering what other secrets Sarah was hiding. But it didn't matter. Whatever she'd done, whatever she was hiding, she didn't deserve to die for Vincent's crimes. Vincent, Jack said into the radio, you just made this personal. He smashed the radio against a tree and began moving back toward the cabin, knowing that the real battle was about to begin. Jack slipped back into the cabin through the rear door, his clothes soaked with rain and blood. Sarah was exactly where he'd left her, crouched behind the kitchen counter, but her eyes held a different quality now. Less victim, more survivor. I heard the gunshot, she said quietly. 2 down. 10 more out there, maybe 12. Jack set the captured weapons on the table and began checking their ammunition. Vincent says you killed 3 of his men in Seattle. Sarah's face went pale, but she didn't deny it. You think differently of me now. I think you're tougher than you let on. Jack met her eyes. What happened? Sarah reached into her jacket and pulled out a small wallet, extracting a crayon drawing that had been folded and refolded countless times. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun, with Mommy and Emma written in a child's uncertain handwriting. They came to my apartment while Emma was visiting her father for the weekend. 3 men, professionals like the ones outside. Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she held the drawing. They didn't expect me to fight back. How'd you take out 3 trained killers? I didn't set out to kill anyone. I just wanted to get away. Sarah tucked the drawing back into her wallet. The first one grabbed me in the hallway. I had my keys in my hand, drove them into his throat. He went down hard, hit his head on the stairs. Jack nodded approvingly. Lucky strike, but effective. What about the other 2? They chased me into the apartment. I made it to the kitchen, grabbed a knife. The second man cornered me by the stove. Sarah's eyes grew distant, reliving the violence. He said things about what they were going to do to me before I died. About what they'd do to Emma when they found her. That's when you stopped running. That's when I started fighting. Sarah looked at Jack with newfound intensity. I put the knife through his ribs while he was talking. Twisted it like my father taught me when I was 16. Your father teach you to fight? Marine Corps, 2 tours in Vietnam. Said every woman should know how to kill a man if necessary. Sarah's smile was grim. Never thought I'd need the lesson. Jack felt a new respect for the woman beside him. The third man? Panicked when he saw his partners go down. Started shooting wild, trying to hit me through the kitchen wall. But he was using a pistol, and apartment walls are thin. Sarah gestured to show the trajectory. Bullets went through my neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Peterson, 83 years old, making dinner for her grandchildren. The pieces clicked together for Jack. You used his panic against him. I came around the corner while he was reloading. He was so focused on the gun, he never saw the cast-iron skillet coming. Sarah's voice hardened. I hit him until he stopped moving. For Mrs. Peterson, for Emma, for every child Vincent's bought and sold. Jack studied Sarah with new eyes. She wasn't just a scared accountant who'd stumbled onto criminal evidence. She was a woman who'd discovered monsters in her world and decided to fight back, consequences be damned. That's why Vincent wants you alive, Jack realized. You're not just a witness, you're the one who got away. The one who proved his men could be beaten. I embarrassed him. In Vincent's world, that's worse than stealing from him. Thunder rumbled overhead, but it was weaker now, the storm finally beginning to pass. Jack checked his watch. 25 minutes until his backup arrived, assuming they could navigate the muddy mountain roads. Jack, Sarah said softly, I need to tell you something else. About Emma. What about her? Sarah opened her locket and showed him the photograph inside. A beautiful 8-year-old girl, with Sarah's blonde hair and bright green eyes. But there was something else in the child's face. A maturity that came from seeing too much of the world's darkness. Emma isn't just my daughter. She's Vincent's biggest weakness. I don't understand. 3 years ago, Vincent's operation was moving children through Portland. Emma was walking home from school when she saw them loading kids into a van. She memorized the license plate, described the men to police. Jack's stomach dropped. She was a witness, the key witness. Her testimony put 2 of Vincent's lieutenants in prison for life. Vincent's been hunting her ever since, but the witness protection program kept moving us around. Sarah closed the locket. Until I got greedy and took that job with his front company. You didn't know it was connected to him. Not until it was too late. By then, Emma was enrolled in school, making friends. I thought we were finally safe. Sarah's voice cracked. I thought I could give her a normal life. Jack understood now why Vincent was willing to send 12 men into the mountains. This wasn't just about recovering stolen evidence or eliminating a witness. This was about finishing what he'd started 3 years ago. The rumble of motorcycle engines cut through the dying storm like a war cry. Jack peered through his scope and counted headlights winding up the mountain road. 6 bikes, riding hard despite the treacherous conditions. Your brothers are here, Sarah said, relief evident in her voice. Jack's expression remained grim. Maybe. Or maybe they're coming to drag me home. The bikes pulled up outside the cabin in formation, engines cutting off in synchronized silence. Jack recognized Tank's massive frame as the club president dismounted, followed by 5 other riders Jack had known for over a decade. But their body language was wrong, too formal, too tense. Tank approached the cabin door alone, his hands visible but ready. Jack, you in there, brother? I'm here, Tank. Come on in. The door opened and Tank stepped inside, water dripping from his leather jacket. Behind him came Diesel, Snake, Hammer, Wolf, and surprisingly Preacher, the club's oldest member. But Jack noticed immediately that their club charter was missing from Tank's jacket. Where's the charter? Jack asked. Though he already knew the answer, Tank's weathered face was heavy with regret. Club voted, Jack, 8-5 against involvement. Official position is this is civilian business. Then why are you here? Because 5 of us think the club's wrong. Tank gestured to the men behind him. Oh, we're here as individuals, not as Hell's Angels. But that means I'm out, Jack finished. Breaking club protocol. Supporting civilian causes over brotherhood. Preacher stepped forward, his grey beard dripping. At 72, he was the club's moral center, a Vietnam veteran who'd helped found their chapter. Jack, son, I've been wearing these colors for 48 years. Never seen the club split like this. What's the vote breakdown? Tank, me, Diesel, Snake, Hammer, and Wolf voted to help, Preacher said. The others think Vincent's too connected, too dangerous. Think helping you brings heat we can't handle. Jack felt something die inside his chest. The Hells Angels had been his family for 15 years, the brotherhood that replaced the military unit he'd lost. Now that family was fracturing over the same question that had haunted him since Afghanistan, when do you stand up for what's right? Tank pulled out a folded document and set it on the table. Jack recognized his membership papers, the charter that had defined his identity for a decade and a half. You turn in your colors, Jack, and you're just another citizen. No club protection, no brotherhood backing you up. Jack looked at the 5 men who'd chosen to support him despite the cost. Diesel, the club's enforcer, had 3 kids at home. Snake owned a legitimate auto shop that club troubles could destroy. Hammer was 2 years from retirement. Wolf was Tank's own son, barely 25, and risking his future in the club. You boys understand what you're giving up? Jack asked. Same thing you are. Wolf said quietly. But some things matter more than patches. Sarah stepped out from behind the counter, and Jack saw the 5 men reassess the situation immediately. They'd expected a helpless victim, not a woman who carried herself like a fighter. "Ma'am," Preacher said, touching his cap respectfully. "We're here to help. Why?" Sarah asked directly. Jack's right. "This isn't your fight," Tank answered for all of them. "Because 30 years ago, my little sister disappeared walking home from school. Never found her. Never found who took her. If there's a chance to stop the kind of animals who hurt kids, then it becomes our fight." Jack picked up his membership charter and stared at it. 15 years of loyalty, brotherhood, and identity reduced to a single piece of paper. He thought about Maria, about the Afghan village, about all the times he'd chosen following orders over following his conscience. "Jack," Tank said softly, "you don't have to do this. We can find another way." "No, we can't." Jack folded the charter and tucked it into his jacket. "But I'm not turning in my colors. I earned these patches, and I'll decide when to take them off. Club won't like that. Club's already made its position clear. This is mine." Outside, engines roared to life again. Vincent's main force was moving, probably flanking the cabin while they'd been distracted by the club's arrival. Jack grabbed his rifle and headed for the window. "How many men you got out there, Tank?" "Just us 5. Rest of the chapter rode away 20 minutes ago." Jack did the math. 6 defenders against at least 10 attackers, with no official backup and questionable equipment. The odds weren't good, but they were better than facing Vincent alone. "Then we'd better make every shot count," Jack said, chambering around. "Because this is where we make our stand." The tactical radio Jack had called earlier crackled to life with a voice he recognized but hadn't heard in 5 years. "Phantom, this is Ghost Leader. We're 15 minutes out, but satellite shows you've got serious company incoming." Jack keyed the radio. "Copy, Ghost Leader. Situation has deteriorated. Vincent's main force is moving to surround us." "Understood. We've got eyes in the sky now. 12 hostiles in 3 teams, moving to encircle your position. Professional formation, military precision." Tank looked at Jack with new respect. "Who the hell are you talking to?" "People who owe me favors from the old days," Jack said, then spoke into the radio again. "Ghost Leader, what's the status on the Portland package?" "Emma Collins is secure. Extraction team found 3 hostiles already in position outside her school. Situation neutralized, no civilian casualties." Sarah's knees nearly buckled with relief. "Emma's safe." "For now," Jack said grimly. "But Vincent's not going to stop just because we got his first team." Through the cabin windows, Jack could see muzzle flashes in the tree line. Vincent's men were testing their defenses, probing for weak points. Tank and his men had spread out through the cabin, each taking a window or door. "Contact left," Diesel called out, his rifle barking as he engaged targets in the forest. 2, maybe 3 shooters behind the big pine. Jack coordinated their defense through hand signals, his military training meshing surprisingly well with the bikers' street fighting experience. These men had been in running gun battles with rival clubs, law enforcement, and various criminal organizations. They knew how to fight. "Snake, hammer, cover the back door," Jack ordered. "They'll try to flank us when the front assault starts." The radio crackled again. "Phantom, be advised that the subjects you're facing aren't just Vincent's regular muscle. We're picking up military-grade communications equipment, coordinated movement patterns. These are professionals." "How professional?" "Former special forces, probably. Maybe some ex-CIA contractors. Vincent's pulled out all the stops for this one." Jack cursed under his breath. Professional soldiers changed the equation completely. They wouldn't make the mistakes that street criminals might. They'd use proper tactics, maintain communication discipline, and execute coordinated assaults. "Tank," Jack called out. "We need to—" The front window exploded inward as a flashbang grenade detonated in the center of the room. Temporarily blinded and deafened, the defenders stumbled as Vincent's assault team breached the front door. Jack's training kicked in despite the disorientation. He rolled toward Sarah's position, shielding her with his body as automatic weapon fire erupted throughout the cabin. Wood splinters and plaster dust filled the air as bullets chewed through the walls. "Preacher's hit!" Wolf shouted over the gunfire. Jack's vision cleared enough to see 3 black-clad figures advancing through the doorway, their weapons sweeping systematically across the room. Professional soldiers, just as the radio had warned. Tank rose from behind an overturned table, his shotgun roaring as he caught the lead attacker center mass. The man went down hard, but his body armor had absorbed most of the impact. He was wounded but still fighting. Jack drew his grandfather's Colt and put 2 rounds into the wounded soldier's head. No mercy for men who hunted children. The second attacker turned his rifle toward Jack, but Diesel appeared from the side, tackling the man to the ground. They rolled across the floor, waiting for control of the weapon. Sarah surprised everyone by grabbing the fallen soldier's sidearm and putting 3 rounds into the third attacker as he tried to flank Jack's position. Her shots were precise, professional, deadly. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Tank gasped. "Marine father, remember?" Sarah ejected the spent magazine and reloaded with practiced efficiency. "He taught me more than just knife fighting." The assault team was down, but Jack knew this was just the beginning. Through the shattered windows, he could see more muzzle flashes, more movement in the darkness. "Ghost leader," Jack spoke into the radio. "We just repelled the first wave, but they're regrouping for a coordinated assault. Copy, Phantom. We're 8 minutes out. Can you hold?" Jack looked around the cabin. Preacher was bleeding from a shoulder wound, but still functional. The rest of Tank's men were shaken, but ready to continue fighting. Sarah had proven herself as capable as any soldier he'd served with. "We'll hold," Jack said into the radio. "But make it fast." Outside, Vincent's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Mr. Steele, you've cost me 6 good men. Send out the woman and the data, and I'll make your deaths quick." Jack keyed his own radio and broadcast on Vincent's frequency. "Vincent, you want her? Come and take her." Jack stared at the blood-stained micro SD card in Sarah's locket, a plan forming in his mind. They couldn't just defend forever. Vincent had too many resources, too many men. But the evidence Sarah carried could end this war before it destroyed them all. "Sarah, that data on the drive. How complete is it?" "Everything. 5 years of transactions, shipping records, political payoffs, bank account numbers, shell company registrations, even video surveillance from some of the safe houses." Sarah's voice was grim. "Enough to put Vincent and 50 other people in prison for life. What about transmission? Can it be uploaded remotely?" "The files are encrypted with military-grade security. I'd need a secure connection and the right decryption software." Jack spoke into his tactical radio. "Ghost leader, do you have secure upload capability?" "Affirmative. We can establish a hardened connection through military satellites." "What are you thinking, Phantom?" "We upload the evidence while we're fighting. Make it public before Vincent can kill us to cover his tracks." Tank looked up from bandaging Preacher's shoulder. "You're talking about going on the offensive while we're under siege?" "I'm talking about changing the rules of engagement." Jack moved to the cabin's rear window, studying the terrain. "Vincent's counting on us being trapped here, defending a static position. What if we weren't?" Through the darkness, Jack could see Vincent's men repositioning for another assault. Professional soldiers, moving with discipline and coordination. But professionals also followed predictable patterns. "Ghost leader, I need tactical assessment. How are Vincent's forces positioned?" 3 teams of 4 men each. Alpha team covering the front approach, Bravo team flanking east, Charlie team flanking west. Vincent himself is approximately 200 meters south with a command element. What about their communications? Military-grade radio equipment, encrypted channels. But Phantom, we've been monitoring their traffic. They're operating under strict radio discipline, minimal chatter. Jack smiled grimly. Radio discipline was a strength and a weakness. It kept communications secure, but it also made command and control rigid. "Sarah, how long to upload your files to a secure server?" "Maybe 20 minutes if the connection's stable." "We don't have 20 minutes of defensive time left," Tank said, reloading his shotgun. "They'll overrun us on the next assault." Jack looked at the 5 Hells Angels, who'd risked everything to help him, then at Sarah, who'd transformed from victim to warrior. They deserved better than dying in a cabin because he'd chosen to make a stand. "Then we take the fight to them," Jack said. "Sarah uploads the files. while we eliminate Vincent's command structure. You're talking about a night assault against professional soldiers, Diesel said. That's suicide, Jack. No, that's special forces tactics. Hit them where they don't expect it, when they don't expect it. Jack moved to his motorcycle gear and pulled out equipment he'd hoped never to use again. Night vision goggles, tactical vest, and a combat knife that had seen action in 3 different countries. Ghost Leader, Jack spoke into the radio, I need diversionary support. Can you create noise to mask our movement? We've got a drone armed with non-lethal flashbangs. Can provide distraction for approximately 10 minutes. Sarah was already connecting her damaged phone to a portable satellite transmitter Jack's backup had provided. I can start the upload, but I'll need to stay here to monitor the transmission. Tank, you and your men hold the cabin. Keep Vincent's assault teams busy while I take out his command element. Jack, you can't take on Vincent and his bodyguards alone, Sarah said. I won't be alone. Jack checked his weapons one final time. I'll have the element of surprise and 15 years of anger to fuel me. Outside, the drone's first flashbang detonated near Vincent's eastern flank, causing confusion and momentary blindness among his forces. Jack slipped out the cabin's rear door, becoming one with the darkness. Moving through the forest with predatory silence, Jack felt the familiar rush of combat operations. This was what he'd been trained for. What he'd excelled at before politics and moral compromise had driven him from the military. His radio earpiece crackled softly. Upload is at 15%, Sarah reported. But Jack, there's something else on these files. Something about your wife's accident. Jack froze in the shadows. What about Maria? The drunk driver who killed her. Vincent paid his legal fees. The judge who gave him community service is on Vincent's payroll. White-hot rage flooded Jack's vision. Maria's death hadn't been random tragedy. It had been collateral damage in Vincent's web of corruption, another victim of a system that protected criminals while destroying innocents. Upload those files, Sarah, Jack whispered into the radio. All of them. It's time the world knew what Vincent Carrera really is. Jack moved through the forest like a ghost, his father's Vietnam compass guiding him through the darkness toward Vincent's command position. The antique instrument had belonged to 3 generations of soldiers, and tonight it would guide him toward justice for Maria. Through his night vision goggles, Jack could see Vincent's setup 200 meters ahead. A tactical command post with communication equipment, maps, and 3 bodyguards who looked like they'd stepped out of a military contractor's catalog. Vincent himself stood at the center, coordinating his assault teams through encrypted radio. Jack's earpiece crackled with Sarah's voice. Upload at 40%. Jack, there's more. The files show Vincent has a government protection detail en route. Federal agents who work for him, not the law. How long before they arrive? 20 minutes, maybe less, Jack cursed silently. Federal agents would complicate everything, turning a criminal manhunt into a political cover-up. But 20 minutes was enough time to end this, if he moved fast and struck hard. Ghost Leader, Jack whispered into his radio. I need immediate extraction coordinates for a high-value package. Someone's coming to clean up Vincent's mess. Copy, Phantom. We're tracking federal vehicles moving up the mountain road. Not bureau agents, these are off-the-books contractors. Jack understood immediately. Vincent had called in his government protection, the corrupt officials who'd kept him safe for decades. They weren't coming to arrest him. They were coming to eliminate all witnesses and sanitize the crime scene, moving closer to Vincent's position. Jack could hear the crime boss giving orders to his remaining assault teams. Alpha Team, begin final approach on the cabin. Bravo and Charlie teams move to flanking positions. Kill everyone except the woman. I want her alive for questioning. What about the bikers? One of his men asked. What about them? They're criminals defending a criminal. No one will miss them. Jack's jaw tightened as he calculated angles and distances. 3 bodyguards, all armed with assault rifles and wearing body armor. Vincent himself carried a sidearm, but relied on his men for protection. The command post offered limited cover, but multiple escape routes. His radio crackled again. Jack, this is Tank. They're moving on the cabin. We can hold them off, but not for long. Hold position. I'm about to give them something else to worry about." Jack drew his combat knife and began his approach. The first bodyguard was positioned 30 meters from the command post, watching the northern approach. He never saw Jack coming. The blade found the gap between his helmet and body armor, and he dropped silently into the undergrowth. The second guard realized something was wrong when his partner failed to respond to radio checks. He moved toward Jack's position, weapon ready, but Jack had already shifted to higher ground. The Colt 45 spoke once, and the guard collapsed. Vincent spun at the sound of gunfire, finally understanding that his command post was under attack. "Richards. Martinez, report." "They can't hear you, Vincent," Jack called out from the darkness. "Just like Maria couldn't hear anything after your pet judge let her killer walk free." Jack Steele. Vincent's voice carried no fear, only cold calculation. "You're making a mistake. I have federal protection. Kill me and you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell. Maybe, but you'll be dead. And that's what matters." Vincent's remaining bodyguard opened fire, spraying the forest with automatic weapons fire. Jack rolled behind a fallen log as bullets chewed through the bark around him. Professional soldier, but panicking under pressure. Jack's radio earpiece brought Sarah's voice. "Upload at 70%. Jack, the federal contractors just reached the base of the mountain. You need to finish this now." Through his scope, Jack could see Vincent trying to escape toward a waiting ATV. The crime boss was abandoning his command post, leaving his remaining men to cover his retreat. Classic coward behavior. Jack adjusted his aim and put a round through the ATV's engine block. The vehicle died with a shower of sparks and smoke, stranding Vincent in the wilderness. "Nowhere to run, Vincent," Jack called out. "You think killing me solves anything?" Vincent shouted back, "I'm just one piece of a much larger machine. My death changes nothing. Maybe not. But it'll sure make me feel better." Jack began his final approach, moving from tree to tree, as Vincent's last bodyguard tried desperately to locate him in the darkness. The man was good, but Jack had been hunting human predators for longer than he cared to remember. When Jack finally emerged from the shadows 20 feet from Vincent's position, the crime boss was alone, his bodyguard lying motionless nearby. "Just you and me now, Vincent. The way it should be." Vincent smiled coldly and raised his hands. "You're right, Mr. Steele. Just you and me. But I'm not the only one with federal protection." Behind Jack, 3 sets of tactical lights blazed to life, illuminating him in a crossfire of aimed weapons. Federal contractors, arriving exactly when Vincent had planned. Jack found himself surrounded by 3 federal contractors, their tactical lights creating a deadly triangle around his position. Vincent stood in the center, no longer the panicked crime boss, but a man who'd orchestrated this trap from the beginning. "Lower your weapon, Mr. Steele," the lead contractor commanded. "Federal agents, you're under arrest for terrorism and murder of federal personnel." Jack kept his Colt trained on Vincent, ignoring the red laser dots dancing across his chest. "Funny, I don't see any badges." "We're operating under national security protocols," the contractor replied. "Classification level prevents standard identification procedures." Vincent's smile was triumphant. "You see, Jack? The system protects those who understand how to work within it. You're just a broken-down soldier playing hero." Jack's radio crackled with Sarah's voice. "Upload at 90%. Jack, whatever's happening out there, the files are almost transmitted." One of the contractors spoke into his throat mic. "Command, we have the target contained. Request permission to eliminate and sanitize." "Negative," came the response. "Vincent Carrera is a protected asset. Secure the data and eliminate all witnesses." Jack's blood ran cold. These weren't rogue agents working for Vincent. These were legitimate federal contractors who'd been ordered to protect Vincent's operation. The corruption went deeper than anyone had imagined. "Vincent," Jack said quietly, "you want to know what the difference is between a soldier and a terrorist. Enlighten me. A soldier protects innocents. A terrorist targets them." Jack shifted his aim slightly. "Which one are you?" Before Vincent could answer, a small object rolled into the clearing. Jack recognized the distinctive shape of a flashbang grenade and threw himself flat as the device detonated, temporarily blinding everyone in the area. Through the chaos, Tank's voice boomed from the forest. "Nobody moves!" The Hells Angels had abandoned the cabin defense and launched their own assault, surrounding the federal contractors in a crossfire. Diesel and Snake emerged from opposite sides of the clearing, their weapons trained on the confused agents. "Federal my ass," Tank spat, his shotgun aimed at the lead contractor. "Real feds don't work with child traffickers." "You're interfering with a classified operation," the contractor warned. "Then declassify this," Wolf said. Appearing behind Vincent with a rifle pressed to the back of his head, Jack's vision cleared enough to see Vincent reaching into his jacket. Not for a weapon, but for a cell phone. Speed dialing a number while chaos erupted around him. "Emma Collins is dead," Vincent announced into the phone. "Activate the failsafe." Jack's world stopped. "What did you just do?" Vincent's smile was pure evil. "My insurance policy. If I don't call off my people in Portland within the next 10 minutes, your precious little witness dies along with her entire family." Sarah's voice came through Jack's earpiece, frantic. "Upload complete. The files are public, streaming to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency in the country." "Too late," Vincent laughed. "The story dies with the witnesses." Jack looked at the federal contractors, who were now arguing among themselves about how to handle the situation. They'd been ordered to protect Vincent, but with the evidence going public, their operation was blown. "Stand down," the lead contractor said into his radio. "Asset is compromised." "Repeat, asset is compromised. What's your extraction protocol?" His handler responded. "Clean slate. No witnesses, no evidence, no traces." Jack understood immediately. The contractors weren't just going to eliminate Vincent's enemies. They were going to eliminate Vincent himself to protect their government sponsors. "Vincent," Jack said urgently, "your federal friends just received termination orders. You're not a protected asset anymore. You're a liability." Vincent's confidence wavered as he looked at the contractors who were now shifting their weapons toward him. "That's impossible." "I have agreements, contracts." "You had agreements," the lead contractor corrected. "Now you have 10 seconds to call off your Portland team before we eliminate you and clean up this mess ourselves." Jack saw his opportunity. With the contractors focused on Vincent and Vincent focused on his own survival, the triangle of threat had collapsed into chaos. "Vincent," Jack said, producing a worn, stuffed rabbit from his jacket. "Looking for this?" Vincent's face went white. The rabbit belonged to Emma, the same toy she'd been carrying 3 years ago when she witnessed his trafficking operation. But how did Jack have it? "Impossible. My men confirmed the kill." "Your men found a decoy," Jack replied. "Emma Collins has been in federal protective custody for the last 6 hours. Real federal custody, not your bought and paid for version." Vincent's phone rang. He answered with shaking hands, and Jack could hear a child's voice through the speaker. "Mr. Vincent, this is Emma. I wanted to tell you that the nice FBI agents say you're going to jail forever and ever." The crime boss's empire was crumbling around him, his government protection evaporating, his leverage destroyed. But Vincent Carrera hadn't survived 20 years in organized crime by accepting defeat gracefully. Vincent's desperation transformed into rage as his carefully constructed empire collapsed around him. With Emma safe, his government protection gone, and his evidence public, he had nothing left to lose. That made him infinitely more dangerous. "If I'm going down," Vincent snarled, pulling a concealed pistol, "I'm taking all of you with me." The clearing erupted into chaos as everyone dove for cover. Vincent's first shot caught one of the federal contractors in the chest, the man's body armor absorbing most of the impact but sending him sprawling. The remaining contractors returned fire, their loyalty to Vincent evaporating with their orders. Jack rolled behind a fallen log as bullets chewed through the forest around him. Through the gunfire, he could hear his tactical radio crackling with updates from Ghost Leader. "Phantom, we've got incoming." Local law enforcement, FBI, and military assets converging on your position. ETA 15 minutes. Copy that, Jack responded, then spoke to Tank through the chaos. We need to end this before the cavalry arrives. No loose ends. Tank nodded grimly, understanding the implications. When federal agents arrived, they'd want to arrest everyone and sort out the details later. The Hells Angels couldn't afford that kind of scrutiny. Vincent had taken cover behind his disabled ATV, using it as a shield, while he engaged both the contractors and the bikers. His military training was evident in his movement and tactics, but desperation was making him reckless. "Sarah," Jack spoke into his radio, "get ready to move. This is about to get very ugly." "I'm not leaving you, Jack. You're not leaving me. You're completing the mission. Those files need a living witness to testify about their authenticity." Through his scope, Jack could see Vincent attempting to flank Tank's position. The crime boss was trying to eliminate the Hells Angels one by one, probably planning to blame their deaths on the federal contractors. Jack made his decision. Rising from cover, he sprinted across the clearing toward Vincent's position, drawing fire from both the contractors and Vincent himself. Bullets whined past his head, but his grandfather's luck seemed to be holding. He reached Vincent's ATV just as the crime boss was reloading. The two men locked eyes across 3 feet of space, years of mutual hatred crystallizing into this single moment. "You killed my wife," Jack said quietly. "Your wife was collateral damage," Vincent replied, bringing his weapon up. "Just like you're about to be." Jack was faster. The Colt 45 spoke once, the heavy slug catching Vincent in the shoulder and spinning him around. The crime boss's pistol flew from his hand, clattering across the metal hood of the ATV. Vincent clutched his wounded shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "You can't kill me, Jack. I'm worth more alive than dead. I can testify against the government officials who protected me. Maybe, but Maria's still dead, and Emma still has nightmares about the men you sent after her." Jack raised the Colt for a finishing shot, but movement in his peripheral vision made him dive sideways. One of the federal contractors had flanked his position. Assault rifle trained on Jack's center mass. The contractor's finger tightened on the trigger just as Diesel emerged from the forest behind him. Combat knife finding the gap between helmet and body armor. The contractor dropped instantly, his shot going wide. "Thanks, brother," Jack called out. "Don't mention it," Diesel replied, then pointed toward the mountain road. "But we've got bigger problems incoming." Jack could see the lights now, vehicles winding up the mountain road at high speed. Federal response teams, probably with orders to contain and control the situation. Vincent's corruption might be exposed, but powerful people would want to limit the damage. "Ghost Leader," Jack spoke into his radio. "I need immediate extraction for Sarah Collins. She's the key witness in this case. Already inbound, Phantom. Extraction bird will be at the cabin LZ in 5 minutes." Jack looked at Vincent, who was struggling to apply pressure to his shoulder wound. The crime boss was finished, his organization destroyed, his protection gone. But keeping him alive might be more valuable than revenge. "Tank," Jack called out. "We need Vincent breathing when the feds arrive." "You sure about that, Jack?" "Men like this, he might wiggle out of justice again." Jack considered the question seriously. Vincent had evaded justice for 20 years, corrupting officials and destroying lives. But with Sarah's evidence now public and Emma safe, his ability to harm others was finally broken. "He's more valuable alive," Jack decided. "Let him face trial. Let the world see what he really is." Vincent's laugh was bitter. "You think this ends anything? I'm just one piece of a much larger machine. Jack cut off one head, 2 more appear. Maybe, but this head won't be ordering any more children." "Murdered," the sound of helicopters echoed through the mountain valley as federal extraction teams prepared to secure the crime scene. Jack's war with Vincent Carrera was finally over, but the larger battle for justice was just beginning. The federal response teams arrived with overwhelming force, but not to arrest Vincent Carrera. As Jack watched through his night vision scope, he realized the truth with sickening clarity. The arriving agents weren't FBI or legitimate law enforcement. They were more of Vincent's contractors, arriving to contain the situation and eliminate witnesses. "Ghost Leader," Jack spoke urgently into his radio. "The incoming federal teams are hostile." "Repeat, incoming teams are hostile." "Copy that, Phantom. We've been monitoring their communications. They're operating under a black flag authorization to eliminate all witnesses and recover classified materials." Jack felt his blood run cold. Even with Vincent wounded and his empire exposed, the corruption ran so deep that government resources were being used to cover up the crimes. Tank crawled over to Jack's position, his face grim. "Brother, we're about to be outnumbered 20-1 by people with badges and bigger guns." Through the trees, Jack could see the tactical teams deploying around the mountain clearing. Professional soldiers with government authorization to kill American citizens. The system Maria had believed in, the system Jack had once served, was actively protecting child traffickers. Sarah's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Jack, I'm picking up radio chatter. They're not here to arrest Vincent. They're here to eliminate everyone who knows about the government connections." One of the wounded federal contractors struggled to his feet, blood streaming from a head wound. Jack recognized him as Agent Phillips, a man he'd worked with during his military service years ago. "Phillips," Jack called out. "Is this what the agency has become? Murdering witnesses to protect traffickers?" Phillips looked at Jack with haunted eyes. "You don't understand, Steele. This goes higher than Vincent. Senators, judges, cabinet officials. The trafficking network funds black operations that Congress won't authorize. So you're willing to kill children to protect politicians?" "I'm willing to follow orders to protect national security." But Philip's voice lacked conviction, and his hands shook as he spoke. Jack pulled a blood-stained federal badge from his tactical vest, trophy from one of the contractors he'd eliminated earlier. The badge was real, the authority behind it legitimate, but the mission it represented was pure evil. "Sarah," Jack spoke into his radio, "how long until your extraction arrives?" 3 minutes. "But Jack, the extraction team is reporting that their clearance has been revoked. Someone with high-level authority is trying to ground them." Vincent, despite his shoulder wound, managed a weak laugh. "You still don't understand, do you? The evidence you uploaded, it'll disappear from every server within hours. The witnesses, they'll die in tragic accidents. The story, it'll never see the light of day." Jack stared at the crime boss, realizing that even defeat hadn't broken Vincent's confidence. The man still believed his government protectors would save him, would bury the truth along with everyone who knew it. "Tank," Jack said quietly, "how many rounds you got left?" "Enough for what you're thinking, but not enough for what's coming." The sound of helicopters grew louder, but now Jack could distinguish between different aircraft. Military choppers, but also civilian news helicopters drawn by reports of the gunfight. Media attention that Vincent's protectors couldn't easily suppress. "Ghost Leader," Jack keyed his radio. "Can you confirm media presence in the area?" "Affirmative. At least 3 news organizations have helicopters en route. The uploaded files have been picked up by major networks. The story's going viral faster than anyone can contain it." For the first time since the confrontation began, Jack saw real fear in Vincent's eyes. The crime boss understood that media exposure changed everything. Government officials could eliminate witnesses, but they couldn't murder journalists on live television. Phillips spoke into his throat microphone. "Command, we have a problem. Media presence confirmed. Request guidance on civilian casualties." The response came through loud enough for Jack to hear. "Negative on civilian casualties. Abort black flag protocols. Switch to damage control and evidence suppression." Jack smiled grimly. The government's cleanup operation was falling apart because they couldn't control the narrative anymore. Sarah's uploaded files were spreading across the internet faster than any censorship program could stop them. "Vincent," Jack said, applying field dressings to the crime boss's wounds. "Looks like your government friends just abandoned you. This isn't over." "Steele, men like me, we have contingencies, insurance policies. Even if I go down, the operation continues." "Maybe, but without government protection." You're just another criminal facing justice. Tank and his Hells Angels brothers formed a defensive perimeter around Jack and the wounded Vincent, preparing for whatever came next. The federal contractors were pulling back. Their orders changed from elimination to containment. Sarah, Jack spoke into his radio one final time. Whatever happens next, make sure Emma knows her testimony mattered. Make sure she knows good people fought for her. I will, Jack. And Jack, thank you for keeping your promise. 6 hours later, Vincent Carrera sat in a federal holding cell, his expensive diamond cufflinks the only reminder of the power he'd once wielded. Jack stood outside the cell, studying the man who'd orchestrated so much death and suffering. You came to gloat? Vincent asked, his shoulder bandaged, but his eyes still sharp with malice. I came to make you an offer, Jack replied. One last chance to do something right. Vincent laughed bitterly. Right? I'm facing life in prison because of your girlfriend's files. What could you possibly offer me? Jack pulled out a chair and sat down across from the cell bars. Despite everything Vincent had done, Jack found himself studying the man's face, looking for some trace of the humanity that trafficking children had eroded away. Your operation had over 300 children in the pipeline when we shut it down, Jack said quietly. Some of them are still missing. Help us find them, and maybe you buy yourself some redemption. Redemption. Vincent's voice dripped with contempt. You think finding a few kids erases 20 years of building an empire? I think it might help you sleep at night. Vincent stood and walked to the cell window, looking out at the mountain landscape where his empire had finally crumbled. You know what the funny thing is, Jack? I never wanted to hurt kids. That wasn't the original business model. Jack leaned forward, sensing an opening. What was? Money laundering. Clean, simple, profitable. Move dirty money through legitimate businesses. Take a percentage. Everyone stays happy. Vincent's reflection in the window looked older, wearier. But the clients wanted more services. Protection for their operations. Transportation for their products. And eventually you were moving human cargo. The profit margins were incredible, Vincent said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. And the clients paid premium rates for discretion. Jack felt his anger rising, but forced himself to stay calm. The children, Vincent. Where are the missing ones? Vincent turned from the window, his diamond cufflinks catching the fluorescent light. He'd worn those cufflinks to every business meeting for 15 years, a symbol of his success and sophistication. Now they seemed like relics from another life. There are 3 safe houses still operating, Vincent said finally. 2 in Oregon, 1 in Northern California. My lieutenants are probably moving the inventory as we speak. Inventory. Jack's voice was deadly quiet. You call children inventory? Old habits. Vincent shrugged, but Jack could see the guilt flickering behind his eyes. The Oregon houses are outside Portland and Eugene. The California location is near Eureka. I can give you addresses, security protocols, personnel rosters, in exchange for what? Protection. When word gets out that I'm cooperating, my former associates will want me dead. Prison's dangerous for someone with my reputation. Jack considered the offer. Vincent's information could save dozens of children, but the thought of protecting the man who'd killed Maria turned his stomach. You'll testify against your government contacts? Senators, judges, agency directors? I'll name them all. Vincent's smile was calculating. Of course, they'll claim I'm lying to reduce my sentence. Without corroborating evidence, we have the financial records, bank transfers, meeting schedules, communication logs. Your testimony just connects the dots. Vincent nodded slowly. Then yes, I'll testify. But I want witness protection after the trials. New identity, relocation, the full package. Jack stood and walked to the cell door. You don't get to negotiate terms, Vincent. You give us everything, and maybe you live long enough to see trial. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Every criminal organization in the country wants you dead now that you're cooperating. Every government official you can implicate wants you silenced. Even some of my Hells Angels brothers think you deserve a knife in the ribs. Vincent's confidence wavered for the first time. You're saying I'm already a dead man. I'm saying your only chance of survival is being useful. Jack paused at the door. And Vincent, If even one of those missing children dies because you held back information, I'll personally ensure you don't make it to trial." "You can't threaten a federal witness," Jack smiled coldly. "I'm not threatening a federal witness. I'm making a promise to a child killer." Vincent sank onto his cell's narrow bench, the weight of his situation finally settling on his shoulders. His empire was gone, his protection evaporated, his future measured in the testimonies he could provide. "The addresses," Vincent said quietly. "I'll write them down, all of them." Jack nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "Vincent, one more thing. Why children? Of all the criminal enterprises you could have chosen, why that one?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, staring at his diamond cufflinks. "Because they can't fight back," he said finally. "Because they're helpless. And because I thought that made them safe investments." Safe investments. I was wrong about a lot of things, Jack, but I was especially wrong about that. The raid on Vincent's remaining safe houses happened at dawn. Coordinated strikes across 3 states that freed 47 children from hell on earth. Jack stood outside the Eureka facility as FBI agents led the rescued children to waiting ambulances. His father's Medal of Honor heavy in his pocket. Sarah emerged from the safe house, her face pale but determined. She'd insisted on participating in the raids, using her knowledge of Vincent's operations to guide the rescue teams to hidden rooms and concealed entrances. 17 children in this house alone, she reported to Jack. Ages 6 to 14. Some have been missing for over 2 years. Jack watched as a little girl, no older than Emma, was carried out by a paramedic. The child's eyes held a darkness that no 6-year-old should ever know. A trauma that would take years to heal if it ever did. Vincent's information was accurate, Agent Phillips said, approaching them with a tablet full of evidence. Every detail checked out. Security codes, personnel schedules, even the locations of hidden cameras. Phillips had proven himself during the planning phase. His knowledge of federal procedures essential for coordinating the multi-state operation. The man was seeking redemption for his earlier involvement in Vincent's protection, and Jack had decided to give him that chance. "What about the government officials?" Jack asked. "Arrests are happening simultaneously across Washington, D.C., Phillips replied. 3 senators, 2 federal judges, a cabinet undersecretary, and the deputy director of a certain 3-letter agency. Vincent's testimony, combined with Sarah's financial evidence, has given us enough for indictments." Sarah touched Jack's arm gently. "Emma wants to see you." Jack turned to find the 8-year-old girl approaching with a female FBI agent. Emma Collins looked small in her protective custody clothes, but her green eyes held the same courage Jack had seen in her mother. "Mr. Jack," Emma said, offering him a hand-drawn picture, "I made this for you." The drawing showed a man on a motorcycle next to a lighthouse, with a woman and little girl standing safely behind him. Above them all, Emma had drawn an angel with the words, "For Maria," written in careful child's handwriting. Jack knelt down to Emma's level, the Medal of Honor burning against his chest. His father had earned this medal for saving lives in Vietnam, and now Jack understood why his father had always said the medal belonged to all the people he'd protected. Not just him. "Thank you, Emma. This is beautiful. Mommy told me your wife is in heaven now. I thought maybe she was watching over us during the scary parts." Jack felt tears threatening, but held them back. "I think she was, sweetheart. I think she was." Emma studied his face with the serious expression of a child who'd seen too much of the world's darkness. "Are the bad men all gone now?" "The ones who hurt you are gone. There might be other bad men in other places, but they won't hurt you anymore." "What about other kids? Like the ones you saved today?" Jack looked at Sarah, then at Agent Phillips, then at the FBI agents still processing evidence from the safe house. Emma's question cut to the heart of everything they'd fought for. "There are good people working to find them," Jack said carefully. "People who won't stop looking until every child is safe." Emma nodded solemnly, then surprised Jack by hugging him tightly. "Thank you for keeping Mommy safe, and thank you for stopping the scary man." As Emma was led back to her protective detail, Jack stood and pulled the Medal of Honor from his pocket. The bronze star gleamed in the morning sunlight. Its ribbon faded from decades of his father's wear. "That belonged to your father?" Sarah asked. "He carried it through 3 tours in Vietnam. Said it reminded him that every life saved was worth any risk taken." Jack studied the medal's inscription. "He died thinking I'd dishonored what this represented." "How?" "By leaving the army instead of fighting the system from within. By joining the Hells Angels instead of staying to reform military culture. By choosing the easy path instead of the right one." Sarah took his hand. "Jack, you saved 47 children today. You exposed government corruption that spans decades. You protected a witness who couldn't protect herself." She gestured toward Emma, who was laughing with her FBI escort. "How is any of that dishonoring your father's memory?" Jack looked at the Medal of Honor one more time, then carefully pinned it to his Hells Angels vest next to his club colors. 2 different codes of honor worn side by side. "Maybe it's not about the uniform you wear," Jack said quietly. "Maybe it's about the choices you make when no one's watching." In the distance, helicopters circled the safe house as evidence teams continued their work. The media had arrived, documenting the rescue operation that would make headlines across the country. Vincent's empire was truly finished, but more importantly, the children were free. Jack's war was finally over, but his real work was just beginning. 18 months later, Jack stood outside the federal courthouse in Portland as Vincent Carrera was led away in shackles. The trial had lasted 6 weeks, with testimony from rescued children, financial experts, and former government officials who'd chosen cooperation over conspiracy charges. Agent Phillips approached Jack on the courthouse steps, carrying official prison transfer documents that represented the culmination of their joint investigation. "Life sentence. No possibility of parole," Phillips reported. The judge threw out Vincent's plea bargain after hearing testimony from the victims. Jack nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring back Maria or erase the trauma inflicted on dozens of children. What about the government officials? Senator Bradley got 25 years. Judge Morrison got 15. Deputy Director Walsh is still fighting extradition from his Swiss bank account. Phillips shuffled through the papers. But the important thing is the system worked. Corrupted parts were exposed and removed. Sarah emerged from the courthouse with Emma, both of them looking relieved but emotionally drained. The trial had required Emma to testify about her original witness experience, forcing the now 9-year-old to relive traumatic memories in open court. "How's she doing?" Jack asked Sarah quietly. "Better than expected. The therapist says testifying actually helped her process the trauma. She feels like she helped protect other children." Emma ran up to Jack with the excited energy of a child who'd been sitting still too long. "Mr. Jack, the nice lawyer lady said the bad man can never hurt anyone ever again." "That's right, sweetheart. You were very brave in there. Will you come to my birthday party next weekend? Mommy said you might be too busy with your motorcycle friends." Jack looked at Sarah, who smiled encouragingly. Over the past 18 months, he'd become a regular part of their lives, helping Emma with homework, teaching her basic self-defense, and providing the stable father figure she'd never had. "I wouldn't miss your party for anything," Jack promised. Tank's motorcycle rumbled up to the courthouse steps, the Hells Angels president looking uncomfortable in the formal setting, but determined to show support. The club had voted to reinstate Jack's membership after the successful rescue operations, recognizing that his choices had brought honor to their brotherhood. "Brother," Tank said, dismounting his Harley. "Good to see justice done." "Thanks for coming, Tank. Means a lot to have the club here. Your fight became our fight when those kids needed protecting. Club stands by that decision." Agent Phillips checked his watch and gathered his documents. "Jack, there's something else. The Justice Department is creating a new task force focused on human trafficking operations. They want someone with your experience to help coordinate between federal agencies and local law enforcement." "You offering me a job, Phillips?" "I'm offering you a chance to make this fight your life's work." Full federal credentials, multi-state jurisdiction, and a budget to build something that can prevent another Vincent Carrera from operating for 20 years. Jack considered the offer. Federal law enforcement had been his enemy for so long that the idea of joining it felt strange. But the opportunity to protect children on a national scale appealed to him. What about my Hells Angels membership? The Attorney General specifically approved dual loyalty in your case. Your connections to the motorcycle community could be valuable for intelligence gathering. Sarah stepped closer to Jack. It sounds like important work. It is, but it means travel, danger, time away from normal life. Jack looked at Emma, who was drawing pictures on the courthouse steps with chalk she'd found somewhere. Time away from family. Mr. Jack, Emma said, looking up from her artwork, are you going to help save more kids like the ones in the scary houses? I might be, Emma. Would that be okay with you? Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. Mommy says sometimes good people have to do hard jobs, so bad people can't hurt other people. That's right. Then you should do the hard job. But you have to promise to come home for important things. Like birthdays and Christmas and when I learned to ride a bike. Jack knelt down beside Emma's chalk drawing, which showed a group of children holding hands under a rainbow. In the corner, she'd drawn a man on a motorcycle with angel wings. Is that supposed to be me? Jack asked, pointing to the winged figure. That's you, helping the angel lady watch over everyone, Emma explained matter-of-factly. Jack looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly, then at Tank, who shrugged as if to say the choice was obvious. Phillips, Jack said, standing and offering his hand. When do I start? As they shook hands on the courthouse steps, Jack felt the weight of new responsibility settling on his shoulders. Vincent's conviction was an ending, but it was also a beginning. The war against those who preyed on children would continue, and Jack Steele would be on the front lines. But this time, he wouldn't be fighting alone. 2 years after Vincent's conviction, Jack stood on the porch of the mountain cabin where he'd first found Sarah, holding the property deed that had arrived in the mail that morning. The legal document represented more than just real estate. It was proof that some endings could become new beginnings. Sarah emerged from the cabin carrying 2 cups of coffee, her engagement ring catching the morning sunlight. They'd been living together for 6 months, but today felt different, official, permanent. I still can't believe you bought this place, she said. Settling into the rocking chair beside him seemed appropriate. This is where everything started. Jack studied the deed, noting that the cabin was now officially registered to Jack Steele and Sarah Collins Steele. They weren't married yet, but the hyphenated name felt right. Emma burst through the cabin door, her backpack slung over one shoulder and excitement radiating from her 10-year-old face. Jack! The school bus will be here in 5 minutes, and I forgot to tell you about the science fair. What about the science fair, kiddo? I'm building a volcano that explodes with real lava. Well, not real lava, but it looks real. And I need you to help me carry it to school, because it's too heavy for me and Mommy. Jack ruffled Emma's hair, marveling at how normal their life had become. Federal task force work kept him busy, but he'd learned to balance duty with family in ways his younger self never could have managed. I'll drive you to school myself, Jack promised. Can't have your volcano falling apart in the bus. Emma beamed and ran back inside to gather her project materials. Over the past 2 years, she'd blossomed from a traumatized witness into a confident, curious child who talked constantly about becoming a scientist or a federal agent like Jack. Sarah watched their interaction with a smile that held depths of contentment Jack was still learning to recognize. She adores you. The feeling's mutual. Jack folded the deed and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Phillips called this morning. 3 more trafficking operations shut down this month. The task force is actually making a difference. Any word on the Baltimore investigation? Jack's expression grew serious. Still developing. Could be bigger than Vincent's operation. If our intelligence is accurate, will you need to travel? Probably. But I promised Emma I'd be here for her science fair presentation next Friday. And I don't break promises to 10-year-olds. Tank's Harley rumbled up the mountain road. The familiar sound announcing the arrival of Jack's Hells Angels brother. The club president had become a regular visitor to the cabin, often bringing news from the motorcycle community and updates on members who were struggling with legal troubles. "Morning, Tank," Sarah called out as the big man dismounted his bike. "Morning, Sarah." "Jack." Tank climbed the porch steps and accepted the cup of coffee Sarah offered. "Got some news from the club meeting last night. Good news or bad news?" Jack asked. "Depends on your perspective. The national chapter is expanding the community outreach program. They want to use our experience with the child protection cases as a model for other chapters." Jack raised an eyebrow. The Hells Angels weren't traditionally known for community service, but their involvement in rescuing trafficking victims had changed some perceptions within the organization. "What kind of outreach?" "Working with local law enforcement on missing children cases, providing security for domestic violence shelters. Some chapters are even talking about partnering with federal agencies on specific operations." Sarah looked surprised. "The Hells Angels working with federal agents?" "Times change," Tank said with a shrug. "Turns out brotherhood means protecting the whole community, not just club members." Emma returned with her volcano project, a papier-mâché mountain that looked remarkably realistic for a fourth-grade science experiment. "Mr. Tank, are you coming to my science fair?" "Wouldn't miss it, little lady. I'll bring some of the boys. We'll be your cheering section." Jack helped Emma load her project into his truck, while Sarah gathered her own work materials. She'd started a non-profit organization that helped trafficking survivors reintegrate into society, using her accounting skills to manage the complex funding and legal requirements. "You ready for another day of changing the world?" Jack asked as they prepared to leave for town. "One family at a time," Sarah replied, kissing him gently. As they drove down the mountain road, Jack caught sight of the cabin in his rearview mirror. The building where he'd found a wounded stranger had become their home, a symbol of how violence and fear could be transformed into love and hope. Emma chattered excitedly about her volcano in the back seat, while Sarah reviewed case files for families her organization was helping. Jack listened to both conversations simultaneously, amazed at how full his life had become. His radio crackled with an incoming message from Phillips. "Steele, we've got a situation developing in Nevada. Child abduction with possible trafficking connections. How soon can you deploy?" Jack looked at Emma in the rearview mirror, then at Sarah beside him. Family had taught him that some things mattered more than duty, but duty gave meaning to family protection. "Give me 12 hours, Jack responded. "I've got a volcano to help explode first." The morning of Jack and Sarah's wedding dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the mountain pines surrounding the cabin where their love story had begun, in violence and fear. Now 3 years later, that same cabin would witness their commitment to a future built on hope and healing. Jack stood on the cabin's front porch, adjusting his tie while Tank and the other Hells Angels brothers prepared their motorcycles for the ceremonial ride to the outdoor altar they'd constructed among the trees. His grandfather's military compass hung from his vest pocket, its brass surface polished to a mirror shine. "Nervous?" Tank asked, approaching with Jack's wedding rings in a small velvet box. "Terrified," Jack admitted, "but in a good way." The rings were simple gold bands that Jack had commissioned from a jeweler who specialized in melting down military medals. Sarah's ring contained gold from his father's Medal of Honor, while Jack's ring incorporated metal from Maria's wedding band, a way of honoring the past while embracing the future. Emma appeared around the corner of the cabin, resplendent in her flower girl dress and carrying a basket of wildflowers she'd picked that morning. At 11 years old, she'd grown into a confident young woman who spoke passionately about becoming either a federal agent or a scientist, depending on her mood. "Jack, Mommy says you need to stop pacing because you're wearing a hole in the porch," Emma announced, with the directness that made her such an effective mediator between her parents. "Is she ready?" "She's been ready for an hour. She's just fixing her makeup again because she keeps crying happy tears." Jack smiled, understanding exactly how Sarah felt. The past 3 years had transformed all their lives in ways none of them could have imagined. Sarah's non-profit had helped over 200 trafficking survivors rebuild their lives. Jack's task force had dismantled 12 major operations and rescued nearly 400 children. Emma had testified before Congress about the importance of witness protection programs, becoming a powerful advocate for children's rights. Agent Phillips arrived in an unmarked federal vehicle, followed by a convoy of FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and local law enforcement officers who'd worked with Jack's task force. The wedding guest list read like a who's who of law enforcement, motorcycle clubs, and child advocacy organizations. "Steal," Phillips called out, approaching with an official-looking envelope. "Wedding present from the Attorney General." Jack opened the envelope and found a presidential commendation for his work in combating human trafficking, signed by the current administration and backdated to honor his actions during the Vincent Carrera investigation. "The president wanted to attend personally," Phillips explained, "but security concerns made that impossible. She sends her congratulations and thanks for your service." Preacher, now 75 and the club's unofficial chaplain, approached wearing his dress leathers and carrying a Bible that had belonged to his father. "You ready to make this official, son?" "More than ready." The procession began with the Hells Angels forming an honor guard, their motorcycles rumbling in formation as they led the wedding party to the outdoor altar. Federal agents walked alongside club members, a sight that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Sarah appeared at the cabin door, and Jack's breath caught in his throat. She wore a simple white dress that complemented the mountain setting, her blonde hair adorned with the same wildflowers Emma had picked. In her hands, she carried a bouquet that included a single red rose in memory of Maria, a gesture that brought tears to Jack's eyes. Emma walked ahead of her mother, scattering flower petals while grinning at the assembled guests. She'd insisted on personally inviting several of the children Jack's task force had rescued, and their presence transformed the wedding into a celebration of survival and hope. As Sarah approached the altar, Jack noticed that several Hells Angels brothers were wiping their eyes. Tough men moved by the sight of two people who'd found love in the aftermath of trauma. Preacher opened his Bible and smiled at the assembled crowd. "Dearly beloved, we gather today not just to witness a wedding, but to celebrate the triumph of love over fear, of hope over despair, of family over violence." Jack took Sarah's hands, feeling the weight of her engagement ring and the promise it represented. Behind her, Emma beamed with pride, and beyond her, Jack could see the faces of federal agents, Hells Angels brothers, and rescued children who'd all played a role in bringing them to this moment. "Sarah," Jack said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him, "I promise to protect you, to love you, and to build a family with you that honors both the past we've survived and the future we're creating together." Sarah's response was interrupted by the sound of children's laughter as several rescued trafficking survivors ran through the forest, playing games and experiencing the joy that had been stolen from them for so long. "Jack," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face, "I promise to stand beside you as we continue fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, and to build a home where love always wins." As they exchanged rings forged from sacrifice and hope, Jack realized that his grandfather's compass had finally brought him home.